Many people who have had a near-death experience say that they have this welcoming committee, they call it, of friends or relatives mainly who had died already, and they come and they greet them. And just imagine what that might be like.
My family appeared. One of them put their hand out, and I knew it was my grandmother.
When I looked up, there's my family. Everybody that had been related to me or part of my family came to greet me in. My grandmother Mary was out front. She was bright, she had a big smile and pure joy.
I was immediately greeted by a group of people, spirits, beings. They were absolutely exploding with a pure love. And I could be with them, and I knew without any doubt that I had known them and loved them as long as I've existed.
57.3% of those having near-death experience describe meeting other beings. When a deceased loved one is encountered during a near-death experience, they may be around the age they died, or interestingly, they may appear decades younger.
I'm surrounded by people that I had known and loved in life, and they were all perfect in every way, fully recognizable as themselves.
Pero me fijé, cuando miré para derechito, miré a mi mamá y a mi tío.
I'm looking at this man who I recognize by my heart, but I knew that that was Pa. He's my great-grandfather. Now, Pa was standing next to Ma. I knew her as an old woman when I was a kid. When she was in heaven, she looked to be in her 30s. This was my family.
On this right side of me were all these animals coming in. You'll be surprised when you get there and your pet's there to greet you in.
Well, welcome back to the What's After Life discussion. Have you ever wondered if there is life after death? Will I still be me? Will I recognize people who have passed on before me? Will I have relationships? Well, before we dive into that topic, last week we discussed some of the evidence that has convinced many skeptical doctors that life continues after death. When people die clinically from cardiac arrest or in car accidents, comas, they have what's called a near-death experience, or NDE. And they often claim they leave their earthly bodies but find themselves in a new spiritual body. And they often say they were up above watching their resuscitation. And we saw last week that studies indicate up to 98% of their verifiable observations were completely accurate or had only a few discrepancies, even though their body was clinically dead. One thing they commonly report about the life to come is you're still you and people who pass on are still themselves, and it's meant to be a great reunion. A reunion like no other. I find that's usually people's first concern. When we think about an afterlife or heaven, many people picture spirits, misty, ethereal, ghost-like people. And it sounds less tangible, less real than this life. And my wife, Kathy, used to not like to talk to me about what I was learning about all this because she'd worry that our relationship might change. It might not be as special or recognizable. And yet those having NDEs report the opposite. We know each other. We're together. We live, love, laugh, eat, drink, work, play. It's life and relationship, but as it was meant to be. That's what NDEers commonly say. And they often talk about their welcoming committee, as you just heard. A crowd of people who they've loved and known, grandparents, relatives, friends who had already died, hugging, kissing, remembering together, starting a new life, a glorious reunion. As part of my research over the last 30 years, not only did I study all these NDE cases and the science associated with them, but it led me also to compare different historical religious writings about the afterlife. If NDEs are having common experiences despite national origin, religion, or no belief, how does that common experience align with our historical religious writings and what they say about the life to come? In the NDEs I studied, I found 40 specific descriptions of the life to come made by NDEers. And I compared how many line up with various religious text descriptions of the afterlife. Like the Buddhist Tibetan Book of the Dead and the Islamic scriptures, they had a few correlations with NDEs. Some aspects of oneness described in the Hindu scriptures correlate. Zoroastrian scripture actually had 5 out of 40 correlate. Yet I found as many or more discrepancies in their views of life after death. However, when I looked at the Jewish and the Christian scriptures, I found an overwhelming 38 out of 40 descriptions that correlate with what NDEers are reporting globally. So I'll share some of what I found in the next several weeks because I think it helps give meaning to these NDE accounts. For instance, on the topic of relational reunions, Jesus is possibly speaking of this welcoming committee that NDEers describe. He says, use your worldly wealth to gain friends for yourselves, so that when it is gone, you'll be welcomed into eternal dwellings. You know, some people worry that the same relational struggles or relational discord that we experience with people here might exist on the other side. You know, like maybe all your exes live in Texas. You're just not sure you want them living next door in heaven. But NDEers talk about some new relational traits of the life to come that actually make those worries incompatible with heaven. Listen as some of them talk about it.
Even the communication with these people or these beings, we didn't use our mouths, but it was a very pure communication.
You know, there was nothing to inhibit me from getting the pureness of the communication or knowing something there.
The oneness that we had was way beyond anything that we have on earth.
There was a joy and a camaraderie and a fellowship in the truest sense of that word. We are there because we loved God and we're loving each other now.
What we struggle to attain here, we gain instant access to there, according to NDEers. Perfect communication, full understanding, a unity that connects people together, kind of like the global internet connected, but not by electromagnetic waves, by perfect love. I mean, imagine the problems that could be solved. Jesus prayed for this his last night on earth, that we would experience the unity of heaven more and more on earth. He said, I pray that they will all be one, just as you and I are one. As you are in me, Father, and I am in you, may they experience such perfect unity that the world will know that you sent me and that you love them as much as you love me. You know, NDEers and Jesus tell us the reason there's unity in heaven is the love and light of God that flows through every person and everything. I mean, think about the possibilities. If, as NDEers say, relationships are lived in the fullness of God's love and light and life, imagine how that would transform relationships if we were full of love, if communication is perfect, heart to heart, thought to thought, no misunderstandings, and imagine the unity. There appears to be quite a contrast in how relationships work in heaven versus here. It raises a few questions for me, especially how might I do better now in anticipation of the reunions to come? What do you think? Here's some questions to discuss. One parting thought on relationships before we leave. You know, the night before his crucifixion, Jesus gathered to eat his last meal with his closest friends. He told them he was going to die, but he said this, don't let your hearts be troubled. Trust in God. Trust also in me. There's more than enough room in my Father's home. If it were not so, would I have told you that I'm going to prepare a place for you? When everything is ready, I will come and get you so that you will always be with me where I am. I will not drink wine again until the day I drink it new with you in my Father's kingdom. You know, Jesus indicated heaven is relational, where real people are together again. Friends and loved ones are reunited, eating and drinking and celebrating life in the most beautiful place imaginable. Real life. I hope you'll come back next week because things just keep getting better. I mean, imagine working, playing, exploring all that God created, but in new dimensions of time and space. That's what we'll discuss next week as we look at the most beautiful place imaginable. See you then.
Things were more beautiful than I could ever imagine. It was past anything that I would believe that it would be like.
The colors were so alive that the most beautiful day on earth is just a reflection of those colors.
And now I'm flying like an airplane, coming in, slowing down, descending, and I get this incredible airborne view of the holy city of God.